Welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for diehard Bengals fans. I am your host, Ace Boogie, and I will be continuing my AFC North preview today with the Cleveland Browns. The first team that I broke down were Pittsburgh Squealers. Be sure to check that out. A lot of their fans are crying in the comments, but be sure to check that out if you haven't. But today we're here to talk about the hottest team in the AFC North right now, the Cleveland Browns. So their 2018 record, they improved to 7-8-1. That was good enough for third in the AFC North. They are an ascending team. They definitely started to ascend last year after they removed Hugh Jackson and started to go with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback of the future. So there were a lot of things that happened at the end of the season. They did not keep Greg Williams as head coach. Their defense coordinator became head coach after the drama with Hugh Jackson being fired and Todd Haley being fired. They decided to go with Freddie Kitchens, who was, I believe, the offensive coordinator. He had a pretty good relationship with Baker Mayfield. However, he doesn't have much experience, but that is something that we will get into later. Key additions this offseason. The biggest one that sent shockwaves through the NFL. They acquired Odell Beckham Jr. via trade. He was one of the big additions. Another big addition was Kareem Hunt. They also, in free agency, acquired Sheldon Richardson, tight end Demetrius Harris. Also in that Odell Beckham trade, they were able to get Olivier Vernon, edge rusher. They also brought on Todd Monken from Tampa Bay as their offensive coordinator. Another big move for them. They also had Morgan Burnett come through, as well as Phillip Gaines. They drafted Greg Williams and Mack Wilson. Those were also huge moves. Some of the key losses for this team: offensive guard Kevin Zeitler, who Bengals fans know very well. Safety Jabril Peppers, who was also part of that OBJ trade. Linebacker Jamie Collins, edge rusher Emmanuel Ogbah, and offensive tackle Desmond Harrison. So let's start with the free agency grade. I think you have to give this an A-. Obviously, Sheldon Richardson was one of the best additions here due to them ranking 28th in run defense in 2018. And he's been on 3 teams total, but he's still a great option for the Browns. And I think personally, an underrated signing was Demetrius Harris from the Chiefs. I think he's going to be a great complement to David Njoku, and he gives the Browns a good number 2 dual threat tight end. And initially I had the Browns at a B, but then they moved it up to an A- when they signed Kareem Hunt. Obviously, he comes with a lot of off-field baggage, especially given the domestic violence incident, but it's sort of a low-risk, high-reward deal. And Hunt has been suspended, I believe, for the first 9 games. So that actually is kind of weird because, in a sense, he comes back week 10 or week 11, whichever one it is, with fresh legs to help them form one of the best, if not the best, 1-2 punch in the NFL at running back. Kendall Lamb, Ardarius Taylor, and Eric Kush were just kind of meh signings. So moving on to the draft, I have to give them a B+. So, and I feel that way because to walk in the 2019 draft, giving up a first-round pick for OBJ, and you still walk away with Greedy Williams is just mind-boggling to me. That should be criminal. They also were able to land Mack Wilson, who was also viewed by most as an early round talent, if not for the character concerns. So those 2 guys were kind of steals and bargains there and were addressing major needs that this team had at linebacker and at corner. So those are guys that could possibly jump in, and contribute early. Sheldrick Redwine was also another decent pick for them on day 3. Sion Taki, I'm not even sure how to say his name. He could help them at the linebacker position, but I think that Mack Wilson would actually have a bigger impact. The only thing that I didn't like is I felt like they could have added more picks to their offensive line weakness. So with that being said, let's get into their strengths and their weaknesses. Their strengths, obviously, quarterback Baker Mayfield. The number 1 draft pick from last year is ascending. He, set a rookie record, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it may have been with touchdowns, passing touchdowns or something of that nature. So you have him. I think Todd Monken, that's another underrated signing. He was responsible for the passing attack in Tampa, where they set some records this year in the passing game. And then you look at the wide receiver position: Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Antonio Callaway, Rashard Higgins. They are completely loaded at wide receiver. You talk about Odell Beckham Jr. and Landry, that might be the best tandem in all of football. I was a fan of OBJ and Landry separately, and they could be a number one receiver on their own team. Now you put those two on the same field, it's crazy. Then you look at running back, and that's another position that is completely stacked. You have a 1-2 punch, really a three-headed monster, even though Duke Johnson's upset right now. You've got Nick Chubb, you've got Kareem Hunt, you've got Duke Johnson there. He's probably not going to stick around. Maybe they trade him. He's requested a trade. But that running back position is completely stacked. And then you look at tight end, David Njoku, Demetrius Harris, as I talked about earlier. This offense is completely loaded. And I like some of the things they did on defense, but it's just overwhelmingly loaded on offense that tends to be the strength of this team. Weaknesses, even though the offense is strong, the offensive line took some hits. You talk about losing a guard in Kevin Zeitler, who we know how good he is. You talk about losing him. You talk about them cutting Harrison, which was kind of surprising to see them let one of their starters at left tackle go. That leaves a huge hole there. And I just wonder if they go through something similar to what we went through last season. So in that sense, I think that it's an issue for them. Secondary depth, I think, is also another weakness. Losing Jabril Peppers is going to hurt. But the Browns are going to need a guy like Greedy Williams at corner to make an instant impact. And if he doesn't, they don't really have much behind their starters at corner and safety. So if those guys go down, that could prove to be a weakness for them. You look at linebacker. The Browns are also pretty stretched thin at linebacker. But if Mack Wilson pans out, they should be just fine. They also have Schobert as well. I think he's probably, given all of the transition in the AFC North at linebacker, he's probably the best linebacker in the AFC North. But he needs some help. They struggled against the run last year. The linebacker position was a part of that. And they need more from that position. It can't just be Schobert by itself out there. They also have Christian Kirksey, so if they can get linebacker right, then they can do something there. One of the biggest things I think that's a weakness is the strong personalities. We've all remembered the teams like the Dream Team and the Killer Bees, but those teams, in a sense, kind of self-imploded due to a lot of those personalities. Will those personalities respect Freddie Kitchens? This is a guy that's been thrown into a position where he's a rookie coach. And he's got a lot of these personalities in the locker room, from Sheldon Richardson to OBJ to Baker Mayfield, who called out Hugh Jackson last year. Nobody seemed to be able to put a leash on him on that. He's already talking about Duke Johnson. And as reported today, there's already some turmoil in the locker room with veterans approaching Baker Mayfield, telling them that they didn't like how he kind of talked about Duke Johnson in public and his trade demands. So can Freddie Kitchens handle these personalities? Odell Beckham Jr., he's out taking pictures on Instagram from Mount Kilimanjaro. I don't know where the hell he is, but he wasn't at OTAs. And Freddie Kitchens kind of commented on that. So can Freddie Kitchens control these guys? We'll have to see, because all it takes is for Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield to get into some kind of spat. I'm not saying that they will, but the way that Baker Mayfield, I honestly think Baker Mayfield would have more of a chance of igniting that than Odell Beckham Jr., believe it or not, because he just seems to not have a filter. That is something that will have to be managed. That's something that could be a disaster. That is the only thing I think that could railroad this team's, season. And then the last weakness, I'm talking about Freddie Kitchens. I think that that's a risk because he wasn't the interim coach last year. And I think that he's just going to have to manage all these personalities. Will they respect him? I don't know. We'll have to see. I think Baker does. but we'll have to see what happens. So with that being said, taking into account all of those factors, I think the Browns easily had one of the best off seasons in NFL history. They rode into the off season with an agenda, and that agenda was to take over an AFC North that was in transition. And with AB and Bell leaving Pittsburgh, the Bengals moving on from Marvin Lewis, and the Lamar Jackson era starting in Baltimore, the Browns are going for it. And you combine that with the fourth easiest schedule according to the Vegas odds with the strength of schedule, it's easy to see why everyone is talking about the Browns. And on paper, they are not only the division crown favorites, but they could also potentially be the favorites for the AFC behind the Patriots. So I think they have some question marks on defense, but I think they have enough talent over there to improvise. They also brought in Olivier Vernon, and you pair him and Sheldon Richardson with the talent with Myles Garrett. I mean, they should have some pieces there, and not to mention, and don't sleep on Denzel Ward. He's a shutdown corner, so they got enough over there to do something. But you talk about this offense from OBJ to Landry, Callaway, Higgins, and Njoku, Hunt, Chubb. They have the firepower to give defenses nightmares. So, like I said before, I think the personalities and their head coach, his ability to handle them is going to be key for this team. But overall, I think the Browns are going to really be better because of an ascending Baker Mayfield. And, I think Baker Mayfield is the reason why the Browns are currently crowned as the AFC North paper champions. So, I think I made some solid points there. Let me know in the comments what you think. But I think as of now, I think that this is the projected AFC North champ, Cleveland Browns. So as usual, I will leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.